All right, howdy folks. Welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. In this video, we're going to do a case study on a truly beautiful Golden Age comic book that I'm surely thankful to even be touching. And so this is going to be a copy of Comic Cavalcade number 18. This is going to be some of the earliest square-bound comics that were ever offered through DC. This one is amazingly vibrant. It is a truly bright copy. I looked up, the CGC census currently has, at the time of this recording, 38 total copies. That's correct, 38. Double digits only, and low double digits at that, copies of this comic book. And of those 38, 36 are universal grade. What's really beautiful about this copy is if we open it on up and look, the pages are very vibrant and there's very minimal tanning on that interior cover. And you know, this thing is just epic, very bright, very vibrant pages. Maybe a little bit of off whitening at the top, maybe a very, very slight amount of interior tanning, but definitely way less than you'd see on the average Golden Age book, making this thing, you know, a genuine treat to work with. Yeah, just like incredible colors, very vibrant. So very nice copy of a very rare Golden Age book. This one's coming to us at a raw grade. If you can see it there in the glare, there is extensive crunching along that spine. The spine is curled all the way up, so this thing's going to need quite a bit of a spine rebuild there if we think about it. There is some light spine splitting, so you can see all the way to about there on the cover on the front, and a little bit more tear on the back. So a good amount of spine splitting, a little bit on the bottom. That's pretty common for this issue. Unfortunately, there is also a good amount of creasing, so it's hard to see on the camera, but if you look at it in a shadow, you can kind of see right along here that there's some creasing. And more problematic are the really big ones across the back. So there's one across the whole back cover right through here, so you can see the edge of it right there quite clearly, and that goes this whole length. And then there's going to be a second one there, and actually a third one up there. And so in general, this one's going to have quite a bit of creasing, and it's going to have a whole issue tear right through the bottom of there. So you can see that, and that's going to go all the way through the book and come out right here on the front cover. So definitely not a high grade copy, but one that is in incredible shape for its age nevertheless. I'm of the opinion that I would put a much higher premium on page quality and brightness and vibrancy than on technical grade. So we're going to start with this one, giving it a light surface dry clean, and I'm going to be bold and go right over all of this yellow. We'll start right at the delicate spine, and I'm just going to, you know, try to polish up as much of that yellow as I can by possible. I might come back and try to hit that date that's on the cover here. You know, looking at the eraser, I'm getting a good amount of dirt off. All the shavings look brown. I didn't see a whole lot of yellow when I looked. There's a little bit of light foxing along the spine as well. But this thing is just begging for a press, so hopefully it'll be thankful with the end result. Of course, a really great cover here with them chasing the turkey, and you can tell the Flash is a terrible superhero because he can't even catch the turkey. Like, come on, your whole thing is being fast and you can't even get a bird. All right, I adjust, it's fine. It's pretty epic Silver Age or Golden Age Flash too. I'm going to try to be a little bit more aggressive on this date. I'm going to get out the micro eraser for it. Obviously the yellow is a very sensitive color that you can erase through, but thankfully the Golden Age pigments tend to be a little bit heavier than the Silver Age. The early Silver Age I think are the most sensitive. Even if I can't remove all of this, maybe we can just lighten it up a good amount. Definitely don't want to overdo it. That's going to be about as good as we can push it without rubbing through it. Good amount of surface dirt here on the yellow, but really incredible colors overall. This one I don't even think I'm going to whiten because it's already so bright for a Golden Age book. It's really genuinely incredible. We're going to target mid-grade on it. Of course, those big diagonal creases on the back are going to automatically land us in that, you know, maybe 6.0 maximum range. And, you know, if we can improve the spine roll, and by the way, you can tell that this is a legit spine roll because, again, over here it's flush. You can't see, or you definitely can see a bunch of the spine on the side, and then if you roll this on over, you have all of that exposed wrap there. And if you look at it top down, it definitely has that curl up over, and so that's definitely a true spine roll. I'm going to try to get the edge of this. I'm pretty convinced CGC does page quality sometimes based on what the edges look like, and so by removing that surface dirt, particularly since it's so nicely splayed due to the spine roll, you know, it's quite possible we might get the roundup on the page quality just from doing this edge cleaning. Obviously, if the book is legitimately brittle or if it has some tearing along here, this would be a reckless, foolish activity, but this one is so bright and so vibrant, I don't think we'll have any problems. Just polishing along that open edge of the exposed pages. They'll always have some surface dirt on them, but those to me look like genuinely white pages. If you really wanted to be technical, you know, along that interior top, you might frown a little bit on the off-white. I think that would be pretty cruel on this book. A little bit more of a crease and a tear over here, some more deep foxing blotches. Just get out all the dirt that we can here off the top. Some more foxing over here and right by the birds. Almost looks like they're sitting on a different stick, and the stick is just some of that staining. A lot of this looks like it might be rust transfer. So definitely, that's another thing that might steer me away from doing a whitening on this book, is those rust transfer stains sometimes act funny with the peroxide. They tend to run a little bit and get a little bit bigger in a kind of a weird way. So it's one of the few things that I've noticed where you can have a detrimental impact on the book, is if you have a large amount of those rust stains, rust transfer stains. So this one might be the exception where it's better to not whiten it, not do a bled treatment with the current extent of it. The rust, there's a lot of little ones all the way through here, one there, there's some more down here, so it's enough where it could be problematic. Another one right there. Definitely just such a beautiful copy. I know that there are the high-grade aficionados out there, and I don't fault them for that. But anything this old, this rare, and this beautiful, I'm a fan of. There's some goobies and stains. This looks like a decades-old fingerprint. A lot of those won't come out, particularly if the oil from the hand is transferred into the paper and then has sat there for decades. It's between the fibers. So unless you get some soap and legitimately wash it, but we're not going to do that. I'm just going to let that little bit of a fingerprint down there ride. I don't know what this is. Looks like something's stuck on there, but again, I'm not going to push it. Dry cleaning, especially on the yellow, directly on that, you gotta let it go sometimes. So improve this corner. I don't know if this was misfolded at the point of production. I'm nervous that when I flatten this out, it's actually going to be significantly bigger than the book, much like you might get a butterfly page or a maverick page. So it's going to be kind of entertaining to look for. It'd definitely be a distinctive manufacturing defect up there. Of course, to try to help clean that area without stressing the fibers, I'm going to do my trick here where I slide a backer board under the cover, and then we'll kind of gently pull. I hate doing corners as it is, and that one crumpled up there is going to definitely just stay crumpled, but we can at least get some of this area. We'll iron that out later, but of course it'll press as well. But getting some of this surface dirt off this bright yellow and just help it, be even brighter is going to be awesome. All right, that might be it for our dry clean. Wasn't that dirty? You know, I'm gonna leave what's left there. I think we got a good chunk of that pencil. I can start to see maybe just a faint yellow color, a little bit brighter. So I don't want to push that anymore. It's barely noticeable as it sits now. So I think that's all right. Yep. All right, so what we're gonna do to try to align the spine is I'm gonna borrow from James's wet stack. And I posted a bunch of really awesome video, you know, earlier in the year about how that works. And we're gonna try something a little bit different on this one. So instead of using the press to reset that spine, we're gonna use our iron, and I'm gonna use my chip clips. But to try to make that as easy as possible, we're gonna marry it or borrow from the wet stack as well. And so the approach I'm gonna take is I've taken paper and cut it into these nice slivers here. And I'm gonna hydrate these slivers, and then we'll tuck them in along the spine, and then we're gonna start our ironing trick that way. And the rationale there is I wanna be able to align this thing on its open edge, you know, kind of like so, right? Get that open edge lined up. And then I wanna chip clip it tight, and I wanna iron it across this way. But if I do that with normal paper in there for the full wet stack method, that paper is going to stick out, and it's going to make it really hard for me to get this nice clean edge on the open edge. But I do need to be able to deliver a lot of humidity inside that spine to try to help with that restack. And so part of doing that is going to be I'm going to humidify the book a little bit, but I'm really going to try to rely on that wet stack here where I put these every 3 pages or so in there, and then we'll tuck them right along the spine. And then if I'm ironing, hopefully as that heat gets into the book, the pages will start to kind of give off that wet stack, and that'll help me reset that spine to fix what is very clearly a spine roll. I mean, this is at least a 1/2 inch, if not more, on that open edge. So that's going to be the strategy. I'll try to cut a video there showing you how I put these in here, but these are simply regular sheets of printer paper cut into thirds. So stay tuned. All right, here we are in the humidification tank. So these are the strips we're going to cut and put on the inside of the book. And you know, I unfortunately forgot to cut this out of the video on the wet stack I did back in January, but this is how I've been doing it, where I'll use my same nebulizing humidifier that I point out in my How I Humidify Comic Books video, and you can see that I've got the strips laying out there. Now, because this thing will blow onto the ones on top, especially the ones centered right here, preferentially over the ones on the edge, what I'll do is set this for about 5 minutes, and then I'll flip and kind of rotate all the sheets around, and then come on back and do it again. And so what I've been doing, if I want to do a wet stack, is about 20 minutes total hydration, so way more time than I do for a normal comic book. But about every 5 minutes, what I'll do is come back and rotate those so that I have kind of a more even blend across the sheets. But you can see here, you know, it builds up quite a bit of humidity in that tank, and that's a pretty cool way to do it. So in general, I've been very happy with this approach when doing the wet stack. This one's going to be a little bit different, where I'm actually using these slivers instead of the full sheets of paper, and we're going to see how that turns out. All right, folks, here we are back with this book. It is much more hydrated, so you can see that definitely on the edge wave there. The spine split always looks significantly worse when the book has absorbed moisture, so that's to be expected. The good news is, you're not hearing that dry crinkling anymore, and so hopefully that there's a bunch there. And these are all the strips now that we've humidified. And so what I'm going to start doing here, particularly to protect that spine split, is I'm going to start one page in here off the front as I start to tuck these wet stack strips into the book. And so we're just going to do that, and I'm going to do them about every 3 pages as we go through here, and hopefully that'll give it enough humidity there as we start to iron. And hopefully I have enough, because this is a super fat book. So the normal method in which I do this is to iron the book flat from the inside out, just opening it up to the centerfold and flattening it out, but unfortunately this one you can't do that because it's square bound, so that makes it a much more annoying. And of course, because it's a super fat issue. There's plenty of pages that we're gonna have to get some buffer in there for. Okay, yeah. The good news is while you're watching me do this, you can take careful note of why the Golden Age is awesome, because there's so many different stories in here. Comedy, Flash, Wonder Woman, detective, and all kinds of good stuff. I was being a little stubborn going in that side, so we're gonna try it from this angle. I'll have to hope I got enough humidity here in the book. That's the annoying thing about doing square bounds. I'm gonna skip that and go from the front here because I'm down to my last two. And hopefully that'll be enough in there. So we got all that in there. It's looking pretty good. Again, to protect that split, we put those on the inside a little bit more. And then what I'm gonna do is try to straighten this up based on that open edge. And I'm gonna try really hard to chip clip these. So we're gonna try to get that to be a nice square edge. And again, I like the chip clips here, particularly with that rubber, because it's not a very intense spring. Go. Looks pretty square. And hopefully if we hold that, we can get the second one on here. All the way up that edge. There we go. And then what we're going to try and do is just gently roll it on over, and hopefully it'll iron on out. So we push that and gently massage it. So we're obviously going to have to do some flattening there. But I'm going to get out the SRP paper. Right. Nice open edge, and I'm just going to kind of gently roll that on in, and then we're just going to try to use the iron. I've got my iron set at about 2 there on the dial. Kind of gently walk it on over. And hopefully that wet stack will start to release some humidity as we get to the spine. This is obviously going to be super pokey. And we're going to have to attack it from the front and the back because the iron is not going to go all the way through the book. We're just going to kind of gently walk it on over close as it can. And I'm using SRP paper in this case because, again, I'm trying to humidify it from the inside, not from the outside. So if you've watched me do these before, typically I use that parchment paper. And the parchment paper, of course, does allow humidity to go through it, which is why I like it most of the time. But you're not noticing me with the cotton round in my hand because I'm hoping that that humidity again is coming from those wet stacks on the inside, as well as having pre-humidified the book quite a bit. So in total time, it's been about a half hour that I had the humidity box going. So I filled up that micro chamber on the inside of that humidifier before I even started. And it's been going for a good amount of time. So still check the open edge there. Check the open edge there, so it still looks pretty flush. I'm just gonna kind of gently walk it on over as much as we can and try to square this thing on out. Such a beautiful, rare Golden Age book. I really appreciate the holiday covers. So, you know, a number of you have seen me with the Christmas collection, so I have that as one of the videos that I went through. Still a collection I'm trying to upgrade, so a number of those books were quite low grade and it was a little incomplete, so there's a couple I'm still hunting for in there. But I do appreciate the Christmas covers from the Golden Age. You know, there's a New Year's cover or two from Superman. Comic Cavalcade had a bunch of them. In general, the Comic Cavalcade books, I think, are underappreciated for their sheer campiness. There's just an outrageous amount of camp in them. You know, there's one water skiing, there's some playing sports, there's all kinds of good American pastime that was captured in those covers. And they're really nice books. You get so many different stories in them, which makes them really, really nice for flipping on through. Although today you'd probably want to buy an omnibus instead of reading the originals, but I don't know if there is a Cavalcade omnibus. Definitely is for the main characters. I'm applying a little bit of force to try to help that wave go. You can feel right here is about where those wet stack layers are hanging out, about there. Obviously I don't want to generate a new crease by forcefully ironing over them, but trying to help that wave out. Let's see if I'm going to re-square the spine on this thing. Looking better. You know, we got a bunch of that kind of tucked under at the moment. Spine split still looks gross, but that's to partially be expected there. Just kind of pull some of that over on the back here. Actually just gonna give it a good eyeball check here. Yeah, we're already getting there, so that's awesome. We're gonna keep massaging it quite a bit, but I think we've got the main gist of it. There's something I've never done before. You know, you probably shouldn't try new techniques on super rare Golden Age comics, but whatever. If you're pretty confident they'll work. You know, it's not a blind guess from somebody who's new at pressing. You know, I've done a lot of spine roll splits, a lot of spine roll corrections, and been fairly confident that this would work quite nicely on this one. If anything, I'm gonna try to oversteer it. So put these clips back in. This is a really nice example of why I like the chip clips too. They tend to hold without causing any damage, which is real nice. Although getting them in there sometimes, I really kind of wish I had a third hand, but here we are. Third hand would help out quite nicely. Overdid that. I think if I were doing this again, I'd be more careful to line those up so that I could get a better angle hanging down the side, but of course they're all... Might actually just do one big one right in the middle. That'll be good. Let's get back to that iron in there. That'll be alright. I was already doing a lot better. Go nice and slow. Now because that spine split at the top, I'm going to try to minimize putting pressure and temperature up there as much as possible. So we'll try to do, you know, reset the other 90% of the spine that's not split. And again, the history of the wet paper in there, you know, perhaps somebody was doing that before I knew about it, but to the best of my knowledge, or at least the person that tipped me off to using that hydrated printer paper on the inside was James W. Key Issue Collectibles. So originally when he was developing this maybe a couple of years ago, he used to call it the moisture maker because it would make moisture inside the book. I think we tried to convince him that that just sounded really disgusting and nobody wants a moisture maker anywhere close to their comic books, so he renamed it the Wet Stack. I was happy to feature that on a really screwed up square bound in January, so there's another nice video kind of showcasing that. But James comes up with some really nice stuff. He's kind of a clever, tricky dude when it comes to comic pressing. He's got a lot of nice tricks up his sleeve. Alright, that's actually reforming quite nicely on the square bound, so I'm quite pleased with how that's currently looking. I think we should give it one more go here. And again, we don't need to make it perfect because the support in the final press should also help it out quite a bit. I think I am going to have to pull these up a little bit. feel like risking them doing that. So let's just eyeball it here from the front. I'm just trying to get that wave going to generate that true square boundness. So right there, I think that's gonna be, it's actually easier if I hold that with my left that way. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, it was actually easier for me to manipulate it from over here very gently, so that's great. And on this side, I'm going to start with that kind of pressure wave going in. Let's repeat paper flipped around. I like putting that shiny side down wherever possible. Alright, and if you're interested in how we're going to press this thing, I've got a nice video with a square bound Silver Surfer comic book. So if you search pressing square bound in the channel, you'll be able to get a nice view inside the press and how I set it up. But I have these pre-cut spine supports, so we're going to use those, and we're going to humidify not only the book, but then you know, we're going to cook it at about 140, and I usually do that for an extended period of time of about 30 minutes to make sure that that heat makes it all the way through the book. Now this one's already got a lot of humidity in the book, but I am going to rehumidify it again just to make sure that there's fresh moisture, particularly where I'm ironing along here as we press this thing. But it's looking a lot nicer. It's not quite fully complete, but let's see what it looks like if I pull these moisture maker sheets out so we can get a little bit more honest appraisal of them. They definitely feel a lot less humidified than they did when we started this, which is good. That's what we wanted, is for them to help reset that spine from the inside out. When I press this, instead of doing every 3 or 4 pages, I'm going to do it every 5 with a sheet of paper in there. So there's no need to put quite as much stuffing in there when we do the final press. We're putting a little bit more in there right now to try to help release that humidity where possible. Yeah, Mutt and Jeff, The Flash, Wonder Woman, all in one issue. It's awesome. Look at this, tied up Wonder Woman. How golden age is that? Always tied up. All right. Let's check that open edge one more time. For this, I think I am gonna rehumidify the book, and we'll go down it with my parchment paper. Like that. There we go. It's looking quite nice. Okay, so let's get my normal parchment paper now, and we'll just try to do one more run through. Giving it quite a generous spritz there with the water. Just try to migrate from outside in. A little over spritzed, but nothing wrong with that. That's a little too much humidity, so I'll wipe that off. Oh no, I'm out of cotton rounds up here. Shake this up as much as I can. Find a cotton round quick. So you see any pooling. Typically don't want droplets, so just over squirt it off the mystery bottle. I know I did that off camera, but I'm just using a regular squirt bottle here to humidify that parchment. quite square on the edge there. Yep, this is what I'm worried about right there. That's what happens when you over humidify. Hit it much lighter. Do one pass. And yes, I've seen a lot of comments on the channel about people telling me you can just over humidify the book, flop it over and iron it or throw it in the press, and that's correct. There are multiple ways to do these spine roll fixes or spine fixes in general. This is one method, it's one I'm partial to. People have asked me why I do this instead of that method, partially because the press time and the press space is something I cherish. You know, making sure I can get those final presses on books. And if I'm using that for the spine, then I'm kind of double dipping. The other element of that is that, you know, I like being able to have control here. So while I'm standing, and I can kind of angle my pressures and be much more controlled with where things go. Yeah, it actually has a nice square feel to it now, which is quite nice. That's exactly what we want. So I can see things like, oh, that's got too much humidity. Dial that back. You know, I can pay attention to the fold of the paper. You know, I can gently move these clips. So yeah, it's a little pokey to sit here and dinker with those chip clips, but we've moved them a couple times now, and getting this nice square feel to the book is quite important. So, you know, knowing that that paper is nice and stacked up and that we're getting all the paper where we want it to go is a critical part of that. So I appreciate being able to do it for the control and for the press time. And maybe a little bit because I find it gratifying. All right, now we did have all that wavy water damage on the spine that you could see at the beginning, so we're also just gonna take this iron and walk it right down along that spart. But it's pretty sweet, you get an actual square now, which is great. So if we look at this now out of those chip clips, that looks square-ish. There was a very small spine split there on the bottom when I started, so that didn't open up. That was pre-existing. You get a nice square vibe to it now. All right, so this thing's gonna go in for a final press, and we'll take a picture of it when it's done, but it already looks a whole heck of a lot better, and it looked awesome before we even started. So I'm finding this one quite exciting to work on. So hopefully you enjoyed this so far. Stay tuned for a final look at it. Was so excited there to get this thing into the press, I forgot that top corner. So let's iron that out. I'm gonna put this support in there to try to help keep that nice and tight. We're gonna put some SRP paper under there to make sure we don't stick anything to it. And then what I'm gonna do here is hit this with a light misting, and we're gonna just run that iron right across that top corner a couple of times. Eating up. If you hear cracking and sizzling, turn your iron down. Yeah, I think that's gonna be about as good as we're gonna get it. Let's get one more drop on there so I can see that there's clearly humidity here on this parchment. There we go. It's looking really nice now. All right, this time for real, we're going into the press. All right, everybody, and this one is fresh back from the slab factory, and unlike the average video where I have to show you what the client sends me as the result, this one is for yours truly, which means I have the physical slab right here. You know, this one, I commented, I thought it was super bright, you know, very minimal tanning. It does have that same very diagnostic kind of overhang miscut corner, so that's real. The wrap is exactly the same. And I have to say, I'm impressed with James at KSU Collectibles, his wet stack spine correction on this wonderful copy of Comic Cavalcade number 18. Paid off quite nicely. This one's now coming in a CGC 6.0 white pages. 6.0 on a Golden Age book I think is quite respectable, and those crisp white pages are something I'm truly grateful for. This one looks so much better. That back spine is now fully aligned on the open edge. It was way off before. This thing was standing up a full ½ inch, if not 3/4 of an inch off the table. And you can see we have our full true square bound square edge back. And this one just looks fantastic. And it gives me all the ammo in the world to remind people the Flash stinks because you can't even catch a turkey. So with that, I'm genuinely happy with this one. Probably the only Golden Age Thanksgiving cover I'm aware of in the comic, really in the DC era, and this one thankfully is just a really great Golden Age cover, I think. So we're gonna hold on to this one for a little bit and actually upgrade the one I currently have in the PC, which was much scuzzier than this now beautiful 6.0 white page copy. And also thankfully that spine split that existed here didn't get any worse. So CGC did note it about a 1-inch spine split, so you can grab the serial number there and cross-reference that if you'd like. But definitely one here I am very excited about. So thank you for watching the process. I'll post the before and after pictures on Facebook and Instagram when this video goes live, hopefully if I remember. If not, feel free to reach out and request them. Thank you for watching. Keep on collecting what you enjoy, and hopefully you watched this demonstration of James's wet stack method applied to this really beautiful Golden Age square bound copy.